Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2023 Mapping, Monitoring, and Maintenance Volunteer Program. Before we get into it, here's some information for Zoom. So you can see at the top, there's a button to unmute, to start video. You've also got a chat function so you can talk to your fellow volunteers. And just try to remain muted until the end of the presentation, and we'll answer your questions at that time. So here's a quick agenda for this evening's presentation. I'm going to start with a short introduction and then go through the list here as shown. So I'm Dylan. I help coordinate the poplar forest and riparian area restoration efforts. So a quick reminder for the video, if you haven't viewed it yet, the general volunteer training video is a good place to start for our new volunteers who haven't yet had the pleasure of working with us. So just if you have questions in general, this video does a good job of answering them. So why are we doing mapping, monitoring, maintenance in the park? So these programs exist for a couple of reasons. It all starts back with a cows and fish inventory conducted in 2018 that indicated that in a few key areas, the population in the park was nearing the end of its life. The trees only live around 80 to 100 years or so before they die off and fall over, becoming new habitat for other creatures. This usually wouldn't be a problem, but with the lack of regular flooding in certain sections, there has been a lack of regeneration to go along with it. When you couple that with the invasive species in the park that impede the other methods of regeneration, such as suckering, and you end up in a situation where the only way to kickstart the forest regeneration is to plant new trees and control the invasive species. To this effect, we've been installing restoration sites and planting new trees to combat the deterioration of the forest. Where mapping, monitoring, and maintenance comes into play is making sure that those efforts are successful. So to accomplish that, we have a couple of goals we want to achieve. The first one is to have the photo points all updated at the beginning of the season. You'll see what I mean when we get into ArcGIS. The second goal is to monitor and maintain the park. I'll go into more detail about that later. And the third goal is for the photo points update at the end of the season. So how are we going to accomplish all of that? So there's three things that we'll equip you with. And those include digital apps, the tools for the job, and your teammates. Working with digital apps is going to make up the bulk of our work, and it's going to be the focus of a lot of our in-person training. We won't need as many tools as pictured in the photograph, but you'll be handed a small kit of tools to be used in the field. Lastly, your teammates are going to be the most important part of this. You'll work in a team of at least 2 people, helping each other to stay safe and keep the park maintained at the same time. All right. Now I'm going to run through a quick ArcGIS demo with you. This isn't going to be too in-depth, but it should give you a good idea of what to expect while we're out in the field. I've got my phone set up here so that I can show you field maps on a computer screen. Now, it looks a little stretched from your view, but it's just the same as if it was on your phone, just wider. So that's what it should look like on your phone. Okay, so quickly I'm going to go over a few functions in ArcGIS so you have an idea of what the buttons do. So up here in the top right-hand corner, you've got a compass, and you can click on it to bring it to the dot in the middle, and that's where you are. So you can see here, I'm in the office at the park at the Bow Valley Ranch Center. If I drag over here, I can click on this and it brings me right back. All right. You can also drop pins that'll bring here, and you can add collection points, directions, or favorite a location. So if you want to come back to that point, you can add it to your favorites list and see it when you go up here. So under the More Options menu, you have a bunch of things to choose from, including looking at the legend, which will bring up a list here of all the items in the park. So if you see something that you're not sure what it is, you can check the legend and you'll be able to find out. Another nice feature is being able to measure things. So by clicking on measure, you can start a measurement and it shall tell you the length down here. With 3 points and back to the beginning, you should get an area and it can tell you how big or round something is too. So okay. Now another important button is the layers menu. By clicking that, you can pull up all of the layers available on the map, and then you can turn them on and off so that if you find something is distracting, like the grid here, you can click on the check mark and turn it off. And then you don't have to look at it while you're working. Now, another really useful function is the search. So by using the search, you can put in a number, like say 92, and then any of the ID points here with a 92 in them will show up. So this is the closest one at 300 meters away. So if I click on it, it'll tell me where that point is and all the information here. And there's the plant's ID number down there, and it contains the number 92. So if you're looking for a certain ID number to go back to it again, to double check it, say, or if you find a cage loose in the field and you don't know where its tree is, you can look it up and it should show you where that piece of equipment should go. Now, some of the work you'll be doing in the park has to do with planting. I like to try and get some volunteers on helping me map out all these dots in the park. So what you can do to add a point is click on the blue circle in the bottom right-hand corner. And that should drop a pin right on top of your device. You can then drag the cursor around to put it wherever you like. You can choose the type of point you want to put down. So for us, it's going to be this planted tree/shrub. We're going to make a new feature here. And you can see it makes a little dot. If I want to change where that dot is, I can drag the cursor, update it, and it'll move the dot there. After putting that point in, what we can do is take a photo of it if we need to. We can select the species, add notes, condition, and so on, all the way down. The important one for us is going to be plant ID number. So when we are mapping new trees, we would put the plant ID number that's on the tag here, and then put a pin flag with that number at the point. That way, when we go to plant our trees, we can associate the tree with that ID tag, and then we know where the tree is and can come back to it later. I should mention too, to discard this feature. So if, say, you put a point down and you decide you didn't want it there, you can click the X to get rid of that right away. Or to place it, you can press the check mark up here, and that will save it. Okay, so that's pretty much how ArcGIS works. Now let me show you some of our restoration work. So right now, it's only showing me points from 2022. The reason that is because of a filter. So when I was working on the story map last week, I was using the filters to show only this information so that I could then show it as an example to people as the work that we did in the park. But essentially, these restoration sites you see here are loaded with points, and each of them have information associated with them. So a part of the job as maintenance crew is to go in and check on the points to see how the plant is doing and whether or not it needs help. Now, some of these are quite busy, like this one. So the idea is in the case that there's a ton of points and it would be very hard for a person to check them all at once, would be just to have multiple groups on that point, on that grid square. That way, all the points can get checked in a timely manner. We'll also be doing a little work in the grassland. So Emma is doing some planting, including broadcast seeding. And so we'll be able to keep track of that and track the progress on it. Now, our other sites are located over here. There's a few near Glenfield, right underneath the McLeod Bridge. There we go. You can see them there. Most of the plants in this area are planted in a straight line. That's just the way we did happen to do those sites. They're planted on spur trails. So they're helping keep people out while restoring the environment at the same time. These Bautiers flat sites are the same deal. Their plantings are also on trails that we were trying to restore. These lighter colored polygons, those are willow stakes. So that's where all of our willow stakes are. Instead of doing each stake as a separate point, I've decided to go with kind of just a bulk approach. There's probably 120 stakes or so in one of these. I'm just guessing, but to find out for sure, we can select it and it should pull up the information. So right here, oh, I got it wrong, only 60. And that's why I'm misremembering, is because this one also has 60. And we did them both on the same day. But having that written down is really handy because then you don't make mistakes. And yeah, so you might have seen the grid at the beginning here. There you go. Each one has a number and letter associated with it. And so in person on Saturday, we're going to have all the teams assigned to a grid square, and then you'll know where you're working. When we put your team name in, each of these squares should come up as a different color. So you can easily differentiate between who is working where. Yeah. And so again, we'll go over that information more on Saturday, but that's a quick overview of ArcGIS. Okay, so this is a demonstration of how we actually do the plantings. This is the site over by Glenfield. So we start off with fencing it. Then we map all this stuff. So those are the pin flags I was talking about. Each one of those would have a small aluminum tag to go along with it. Then we planted everything and mulched the ground. So we break up the soil in there and weed out from around it as well. We did a bit of hand pulling that day too, I think. And in the buckets there is the mulch. There's a huge mulch pile behind the truck there. And we brought all of it into the restoration site. When we were finished, we threw woody debris around inside the site. Mostly it's just to stop people from going in. So as I said, a lot of our work is going to be mapping vegetation going into the park. The first screenshot is of a poplar site planted in 2021. It was all mapped by Cassie, another intern here at the time, and myself. This second photo here is as it exists in the December of that same year in 2021. So it's all wintry and covered in snow. From our plantings in 2022, we found that the easiest way to track the vegetation was to make sure that all the mapping was done before the plants were in the ground. So that meant mapping everything out with pin flags beforehand and adding the ID tags to them. When people go to plant the tree, they just make sure to attach the tag to the cage when the part is installed. We've tried it some other ways before, but have found that this method leaves us with the lowest likelihood of losing a tree or ending up with orphaned map points. Shifts that have mapping specifically as a task are set up in Better Impact for you to attend. They're with me, so you don't necessarily need a partner. I've made them all in the evening, so if you happen to have a job, you can still help if you like. For monitoring, what we're looking for is the condition of all of the restoration components, the water boxes, the fences, the signage, the metal tags, and most importantly, the vegetation. We'll be updating the tree condition for our plantings, which will help us determine the watering schedule, as well as tell us what sites need to be replanted or can be let loose and have the fencing removed. How we do this might change based on what we learned by doing it. Last year, we had a horrible time in the restoration sites without the embossed metal tags. So in those instances, we don't try to recover the data. Instead, we just do a stem count to get the number of live plantings left in the site. This monitoring is crucial as it informs the rest of our work. So the maintenance will encompass a lot of different things and can depend on your training in other programs too. We'll be replacing zip ties, repairing bits of fencing, replacing water box components, cleaning up some debris, and being flexible in general with tasks. If you know you'll need something from the shift beforehand, you can let us know. I can leave some supplies in the red building, the barn, so that you're able to access them when you come to volunteer. For locations further away, like Glenfield and Boutiers Flats, that will more depend on your circumstances. If you can't move the equipment over there, we can arrange something else. All right, now that you know what we're doing, here's some tools that we'll be equipping you with. The backpack is assigned on an as-needed basis. I found a lot of people with the RHA program last year opted to use their own. So if you need a backpack for this work, we can make one available. But the tools that will be going in that backpack include the first aid kit, some side cutters and zip ties, gloves, of course, vests, and your cell phone. The cell phone can stay in your pocket. You don't have to put it in the backpack. Your teammates are a very important part of this work that we'll be doing. Safety is the main reason we have people work in teams. If there's an emergency of any kind, there's always someone there to help. If you happen to be in the park anyways and add your observations to the map, that's fine, but you won't be able to do the first and last 5 minutes or record stats. For the teammates, we're signing in person, so you can also work out team members, scheduling details, and team names. It will also help you get the squares you like. I thought that having an assigned area to visit would make things easy. It's not a hard limit by any means, so if it makes sense according to the route you take, or the pathway to do a small section outside your square, then by all means go for it. If you're worried about which areas to work in, a good way to pick the squares would be to find ones that are easier for you to get to. If you already have a route at the park that you like to take, then those would make good candidates. It's okay if there's more than one team to a square as well. As I mentioned, like if there's a ton of points in a single square, then we can just have areas that overlap. That's perfectly fine. I'm also going to open up a committee in my impact page to help coordinate the work. You'll have to let me know if you'd like to opt in so that you can receive emails from the group. But once you do, you can email everybody who's also opted in. This will reveal your email to everyone in the committee. And so you can also receive replies the same way. If you reply to a message that you get on the committee, then you'll also be revealing your email, but only to the person who sent the email to begin with. If you have any questions about it, just let me know. I imagine people using this kind of system to swap squares if they need to, or seeing if anybody needs a teammate mid-season. If anybody new comes on board after training, they could use it to find a group that they can partner up with. This is the first year I'm trying this feature, so let me know what you think of it when you try it. Also, teams that do the most last 5-minute reports get bragging rights. It's not a lot, but I will try to mention it at the year-end dinner. So how a shift will work, you'll show up ideally with a charged cell phone, water, clothing for the weather, snacks, your teammates, and the equipment. The clothing for the weather is very important in case it rains or is very windy. You don't want to be cold and wet. If you can think of anything else to add to this list, let us know. New tools are things we can think of adding to make the program better. Prepping for the shift, you should also leave behind any valuables. So rings, watches, glass containers, earbuds should also be left at home. Pets, if you're going off trail, make sure they stay at home for the sake of the wildlife. You'll start your shift by partaking in the first 5 minutes form. So you'll enter your information here and start your time clock. Once the time clock is up and running, you'll be able to keep track of your hours, as well as make you reachable in the event of an emergency. So we'll be able to check it to see who's in the park and then inform anybody something is amiss. The last 5 minutes form is also very important. We use it to record statistics. Both the forms are available on the website, and more information on the first and last 5 minutes is in the general volunteering video. So the mobile time clock is how we track all of the field work. It also lets us know who is in the field in the event of emergencies. So safety is very important. We need to make sure to monitor ourselves while monitoring the plants. The first 5 minutes form is going to be the safety checklist that you need to make sure that you're being safe while out monitoring. It's important to note that anytime there's a change in conditions, you should reassess to make sure you're still safe. If you find that a path you were planning to take is flooded, don't go there if you're not prepared. If rain starts up and you're not ready for it, perhaps turn back and go another day. Here's a list of the safety SWPs for our particular program. You should pay attention to the ones at the bottom in particular for this program, but all the programs require the ones up top. The number 2 regulation first aid kits are required for any time we have volunteer teams out on an outing. It's all right to use whatever components are necessary inside the kit for a given scenario. So if you need more than just the Band-Aids inside the kit, consider opening it up and using those bits. Once you do use the kit, an incident report should be filled out within 48 hours. and you'll also have to let staff know. You should return your kit for restocking when you have a chance, just to make sure you've got a full one at all times. And the Band-Aids outside the kit are for you to use just so you don't have to open the kit just to get at a small Band-Aid. And there's also more details on first aid in the general volunteering video. Now, the field question resolution map is a good guide for any sort of questions that visitors might have while you're in the park. If you're wondering too what to do in the event of, say, a large animal concern, or if there's an issue with one of the facilities, you can follow the chart to find the appropriate service to call. The change this year we made on our question resolution map was adding 310 lands to it. So if you call 310 land, they should be able to connect you to any of the other services. We happen to know the actual service to call in the event of stuff, but 310 land will connect you if you happen to forget any of the other ones. And always in an emergency, call 911 first. All right, police checks. So sometimes police checks take a long time to be completed. We certainly wouldn't want police checks to be a barrier in the event that you can't get it accomplished on time before you begin volunteering. But having it in place is a nice thing to have. If you need a police check in a second program, then you've already got it done and you don't have to worry about whether or not you're covered in that sense. Another good thing to note is that you only need to do it once. So once you've got your police check completed, it doesn't need to be renewed year after year. Okay, some friendly reminders for you before the end of the presentation. Remember to read the volunteer handbook. Read also the volunteer agreement, just so you're familiar with everything that it entails. You should also review the SWPs before you begin work, knowing exactly what the safety requirements are for the work you're performing is very important to staying safe. The first and last 5 minutes should be done each and every shift. Again, making sure you've got those safety checklists finished and that we're recording statistics for all of our grants is vital to continuing these programs. Remember to use the mobile time clock to log your hours. So this way, your end of the year's hours on your account are as accurate as possible. Remember to find volunteer opportunities matching your interests, skills, abilities, and limitations. So it's important that you have work that matches up with what you're capable of. If you find that in certain programs you're doing too much stomping around in the bushes and you'd rather be more on the pathway, that's certainly something we can accommodate for you. Sometimes you'll feel like you want to go above and beyond and do more than is expected in any given activity. Sometimes that can lead to unsafe situations. So remembering to assess the situation every time something new happens is an important part of staying safe. Lastly, remembering to report all of the incidents within 48 hours. You can stay in touch with us throughout the season. Send us emails if you've got any additional thoughts or comments about the program. So that's like ideas for equipment, or if you see some way that it can be organized more efficiently, we're always open to chat about how the program's going. There's also the end of year volunteer experience survey. That's an important way to get feedback as well. There's my contact information. You can get in touch with me through email or cell phone. That number there is a Business Connect number, so I believe it turns off between certain hours. So you don't have to worry about calling me at 7 o'clock at night. You can always leave a voicemail, or you can text that number too, and I'll receive it then as well. And that's everything. We've got some credits there. And if you have any questions, you can either type them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask away.